The U.S. and Jordan teamed up today, urging the Israelis and the Palestinians to take new steps toward peace. But looming over these talks, the attack on a base in Afghanistan carried out by a double agent. It was a devastating blow to both American and Jordanian intelligence. And joining us now, the Foreign Minister of Jordan, Nasser Judah. Welcome to Washington.
Thank you, Wolf.
I know you've been meeting with the Secretary of State, George Mitchell. We're going to get to the peace process in a few moments, but let me pick your brain on this Jordanian doctor who blew himself up, a suicide bomber at the CIA base in Afghanistan, killing 7 CIA officers, as well as a Jordanian intelligence officer as well. What can you tell us about this?
Well, clearly, I'm not an intelligence officer, and I don't comment on intelligence operations, but I certainly tell you that this is a war on terror that Jordan is at the forefront of, and this has been the case for many, many years. Actually, for the past few decades, Jordan was victimized by terror and terrorist group since as far back as the 60s and the 70s, and we've done everything that we could.
So you're with the U.S. when it comes to fighting this kind of terror?
We are with all our allies, but most importantly, we're there to protect our own national interest and our citizens and our country from this scourge of terror and terrorism. So this is a global war on terrorism. We're very much at the forefront of this, and we cooperate with our allies. You know, information is one thing. Sharing information when it comes to intelligence is something that makes this war much more effective.
Because Jordan's been the victim of these kinds of attacks over the years as well. But let's talk a little bit about this doctor, Humam Khalil Abu-Mulal al-Balawi, a physician. How did this happen? Was he a double agent? Was he a triple agent? The reports that we're getting is he was brought to the CIA by Jordanian intelligence.
Again, I'm not in a position to comment on operational procedures or on details. Suffice it to say that we're in this together. And we've seen the reports, just as you have seen the reports of how he was recruited. And I must say that my information, from what I am aware of, is that there has been valuable information that was given not just by people like this character, but by many others in this ongoing intelligence operation.
Was he providing valuable information to Jordan?
I have been led to believe that, yes, he has been providing. And
because the reports we're getting is that supposedly he was trying to help Jordan and the U.S., for that matter, find the #2 operative in al-Qaeda in Pakistan, Ayman al-Zawahiri.
I really, and I'm not avoiding your question, Wolf, but I really am not aware of operational details, and I don't get involved with that. I was asked a question today when giving the press a briefing after my meeting with Secretary Clinton, and I said neither of us here, the Secretary and myself, are intelligence officials. Suffice it to say, once again, that this is an ongoing war on terror. Don't forget, and we must not forget, that Jordan was a target of terrorists many times, not least of all the latest incident that took place in 2005 when 3 hotels were attacked in Jordan and we lost many civilians. So we are targets of these terrorists, and we will do everything that we can to prevent these terrorists from carrying out their plans. And we don't wait for terrorists to implement their plans. We try to uproot them before they implement their plans. And this is important to continue working with our allies on this.
I want to move on, but just to nail down this one point, at one point you did believe this individual, this physician, was providing good intelligence?
This is the report that we're seeing all over. But again, I'm not in the position to comment on that. All I can say is that we cooperate with our allies. We pursue our own national interest. I think Jordan has been very, very effective. And the success stories that we've seen over many years in terms of the effective way that intelligence operations were handled to pursue terrorists where they are.
And as far as U.S.-Jordanian relations are concerned, has it had a negative impact, this incident, at all?
No negative impact
You met with the Secretary of State. Everything is back as normal.
As I said, we've got to look at the track record, and we've seen many success stories, and we've seen many effective ways of dealing with terror and terrorism and pursuing terrorists. Let's look at how Zarqawi was pursued, for example. And there was another...
Abu-Mulal al-Zarqawi was the head of al-Qaeda in Iraq, originally from Jordan.
And Karbouli, who was arrested by Jordanian intelligence officers in Iraq itself, because he was planning to target Jordan against it.
Let's talk about the overall war on terror. Thomas Friedman writes in the New York Times this week, he says this: "No laws or walls we put up will ever be sufficient to protect us unless the Arab and Muslim societies from whence these suicide bombers emerge erect political, religious, and moral restraints, as well as starting by shaming suicide bombers and naming their actions murder, not martyrdom. You agree with him on that?
Of course I agree with them. Anybody who targets civilians, kills innocent people, and perpetrates terror and terrorism is certainly not a martyr. I mean, I think we have many fatwas, and fatwa, I think, is a common word for everybody.
It's a religious order.
Yeah, we've had many fatwas by religious figures around the Muslim world that targeting innocent civilians is certainly nothing that qualifies anybody to become a martyr.
So why do so many people in the Muslim world, or the Arab world for that matter, call these suicide bombers martyrs?
Well, I'm not in a position to comment on what people say. Well, our position in Jordan is very, very clear. People who target innocent civilians, who kill and murder children, are murderers, and we've always maintained that. I don't think you can look at everybody with the same yardstick. I mean, there are people who have their own views. You don't necessarily have to agree with them. We certainly don't agree with that. But I think what we do in Jordan is, in terms of action rather than words, look at the Amman message, for example, that His Majesty King Abdullah II initiated a few years ago, which explains the true spirit of Islam, and which explains that dialogue and civil relations between people is what should govern relations between nations and cultures and civilizations, not violence.
Based on what you heard from the Secretary of State, from George Mitchell, the special U.S. Middle East envoy, while here in Washington, is this Israeli-Palestinian peace process going to get started once again anytime soon?
I'll get to that in 3 seconds, if I may, but let me just go back to Afghanistan and the war on terror. You know that Jordan is present in Afghanistan and has been present right from the beginning. We have humanitarian operations there, we have logistical operations, and of course we have operations that target terror and terrorism, because we have been a target of that and we'd like to prevent that. And our presence in Afghanistan will not only continue, but it will be enhanced and increased. And this is, again, as a collective effort with all the countries that are fighting terror and terrorism, but also to pursue our own national interests and to protect our citizens and our land.
Jordan has been a very good ally of the U.S. when it comes to
that commitment not only stays, but it's going to be increased and in different ways, and you'll see that. But coming back to the peace process, I'm encouraged by what I heard today from...
Encouraged by what?
Encouraged by the continued commitment that I see from President Obama's administration, from the President himself, from the Secretary of State, from Senator Mitchell. We've had many ups and downs, but this is the story of the Middle East conflict. We've had many ups and downs over many years. We have to make sure that 2010 is the year that sees the relaunch of negotiations between Palestinians and Israelis in a comprehensive context. The Arab-Israeli conflict was referred to by President Obama when he first walked into the Oval Office as a conflict that needs to be resolved in the context of U.S. national interest. Perhaps this is the first time that we've heard it put that way. President Obama expressed a sense of urgency at the time. He engaged from day one. We've seen, again, difficulties on the ground.
So you see no reduction in the U.S. determination to try to help out? On
the contrary, I see a renewed determination. The most important thing right now is to get Palestinians and Israelis, and by extension Syrians and Israelis and Lebanese and Israelis, to sit together and try to resolve this conflict. The Arab-Israeli conflict perhaps is also the root cause of many other symptoms around the world that can be dealt with much more effectively if this Arab-Israeli conflict is sorted out. We know what we want. We want a Palestinian state that is independent, viable, contiguous, and we want a safe and secure Israel. And His Majesty the King refers to this as the 57-state solution. Everybody wins, Wilf. You have the Palestinians who get their state, the Israelis who get their security, Syrians and Lebanese who get their occupied territory back, and you have normal relations between Israel and 57 Arab and Muslim countries. And you get a region that will be full of opportunity and hope for the future. So we cannot give up. I think there's fresh ideas that were discussed today. I know that the Secretary is meeting with other Arab officials and probably will be discussing this with the Israelis as well. We need to get a conducive environment in place that will enable negotiations to be launched and that will enable an end game to be set. We have to refocus on the end game and not keep talking about how to talk. Rather than that, we should be talking about what to talk about.
Well, good luck. Jordan has been a reliable partner and can certainly be of great help to both the Israelis and the Palestinians in moving forward.
And, of course, there are complicated issues when you talk about final status issues. Refugees, Jerusalem, borders, security,
Mitchell says it can be done in 2 years once the talks start. Do you agree?
Well, if we build on everything that has been achieved before, I mean, if you look at what happened in 2000 and the discussions that were taking place between Abbas and Olmert in 2008, you cannot start from square one. You've got to start on and build on what happened before. And if you do that, then I think time is quite conducive.
Foreign Minister, good luck.
Thank you very much, sir.